Welcome everyone to Connect with Control-M, where the support team gets a chance to show some of the exciting things going on with Control-M. My name is Eric Rudy, and I'm a lead technical support analyst in the Control-M support team. In this webinar, we will be discussing some of the newer features of both Batch Impact Manager and Forecast. James Pendergrass and Rafi Origin today will be joining me as panelists to help answer questions at the end. So in the past, we had two separate webinars that covered the basic capabilities of both BIM and Forecast, and these gave you the main functions of both products and helped you maneuver around. I'll show you the links to these at the end of the webinar, but I do recommend that you watch these if you have not seen them before. At any time, though, in this webinar, you can right-click the WebEx event and select File, and then Save As, and you'll have that info right away. So we do recommend saving as a PDF for best viewing. For today's agenda, I want to show you some of the new features in both BIM and Forecast that have been introduced in version 9 and in later fix packs of version 8. We'll also have a demo to see how these are used and then discuss some helpful items that I would like you to take away from this. And finally, we'll have that Q&A session where you can put in your questions in the panel at the right. Feel free to post any questions to all, and we'll get to those at the end. So the BIM features I want to demo include things like runtime estimations, which are where in the monitoring domain, we can see when BIM estimates jobs will run and for how long. And this is for all jobs, though, not just those in a BIM service. Also an ad hoc service. This is a way where you can view non-service jobs in a BIM-style viewpoint. And then if you have times where you have a host or group that might be out of commission, you can now run a Whatif Downtime scenario to see how this affects your service. As well, we have a new estimation assistance tool that helps you find problematic jobs in larger services a bit quicker than you might have been able to do in the past. We also have a new web interface that uses HTML5, starting with FixPack 3 in version 9. And then finally, the automatic export functionality gives us a way to capture information for troubleshooting purposes right when a service has a problem. In Forecast, I wanted to show you a few what-if scenarios as well as some rules to use during a forecast run. And we'll also take a quick look at viewing the schedule from a folder perspective. So let me go ahead now and switch to our demo environment, and we can start getting going here. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was runtime estimation. So I'm using the version 9 FixPack 3 GUI here at the moment. So the runtime estimations, what you'll see are these in every single job, information about when a job starts, in essence how long it'll run and when it'll end. So, and this is for all jobs though, not just jobs in a BIM service. So and right here, these jobs are in a BIM service, but I've got some jobs that are not part of a BIM service. And so we'll see the same thing. We'll see the runtime estimations. So this gives you a good idea of, when your jobs are going to run, how long they're going to run. If anything changes, you're going to be able to see that directly. So for example, I've got this job here, job 7, that's slated to run at 14:55. Now the runtime estimations are all based upon statistics of the job. So the more statistics a job has, the more accurate our runtime estimations are going to be. And things like the from time of a job, when a job is supposed to start, also obviously are going to affect that. So if we take a look at this particular job, this job 7, we can see that it's got quite a few statistics, and it's going to have a fairly accurate estimate. So if you've got a job that's run, say, at 2 a.m., then 3 p.m., and then 7 a.m. the next day, your estimates might be off. So as you build up that information, it's going to give you more accurate. But for example, if I change a job, I'm going to go ahead and modify this job, and we can take a look at the scheduling attributes of it. We'll notice that it starts at 14:55. So if I make a change midstream, let's say schedulers call me up and say we want to run this job at a later time, maybe 16:55, for example, I'll go ahead and save that. and we can see what effect that has on the jobs below it. So for those of you that have used BIM in the past, you'll remember that there is by default a 60-second interval that BIM performs its calculations. And so it may take up to that polling interval where we are to see what that change is. So while we've made that change to that job, we'll come back and look at that in just a moment. I do want to mention too, again, because this is based upon statistics, if I've got a job that has not run yet, so if I look at this job, it has no statistics. BIM still has to make some assumptions on when it thinks this is going to run, and so it's going to run. It estimates or assumes it's going to run at the current time, and then it's going to be for 5 minutes. So the 5 minutes comes from a system parameter called default average time. So you can change that, but you'll notice over time that every polling interval, this time will change. And so until that job has some statistics built up, it's not going to be able to have what you might consider an accurate estimate until that occurs. So going back here, BIM hit its poll, and so we see that this job changed 1655 from 1455. But what you'll notice then is that changed the estimates for the jobs downstream. So, if you happen to be monitoring jobs, if you're monitoring job 9 and you suddenly know, or you know that it's supposed to start at 1457 and suddenly it changed, you're going to be able to see that right away instead of just having some gray job that runs 2 hours later and you didn't really know anything about it. So good information for you to see exactly what's going on with your job streams. Okay, so the next feature I wanted to talk about was what we call ad hoc services. So this is a way to see really any job, but typically it's going to be jobs that are not currently part of a BIM service in a BIM style viewpoint. So for example, I've got these jobs here. Again, these are not part of a service. So what you might typically do is go to the last job, but you can do it at any point. I can even do this for jobs that are in a BIM service, that is. So what I'll do is I'll highlight that job. In the analysis section here, I'll click Open Analysis Viewpoint. And so what this is going to do is give me information that looks more like a BIM service, but these are for non-service jobs in this case. So I'm going to see the critical path. I can use the same types of functionality in the analysis viewpoint here that I couldn't before because these are not part of a BIM service, but I can use them now. So I'm going to be able to see the estimate to completion, the total time gap, which is the time from new day to the first job, and then the gaps between those jobs. So again, if I change a job, I'm going to be able to see that. So let's change our 7 job again. We'll modify this, and maybe our operator said, okay, this job is a little bit we can't have it run at this specific time, so let's set it even earlier then. So let's set it to 1355. And again, it's going to have to go through up to that minute cycle unless you've changed the default for the polling cycle for BIM. What you'll notice though in the ad hoc service is that it does change or remove the estimates until that polling time hits. So we'll be able to see exactly when that change occurs. So BIM hit its time, we see that it changed, it affected the jobs downstream, and then it changed our estimate to completion, shortened our time gap. So just a real nice way to get BIM style information really from any job at any point. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was the new feature in version 9 called a Whatif Downtime scenario. So as those of you that have used both BIM and Forecast know, there's different what-if scenarios. So this is a new one for version 9. So I'm going to take a look at my assembly service here in the service monitor, and I'm going to open up an analysis viewpoint, and we can take a look at this new Whatif downtime scenario. So here's the Whatif scenarios. I'm going to go ahead and add one here. Where this is helpful is if, let's say, your IT team comes up and says, I've got an agent or I've got a group of agents that I'm going to take down, and you want to know what effect that's going to have on a service. So I'll click the Whatif downtime. I'm going to go ahead and select my Control-M server, and in this case, this service only has 2 agents to it, but if I had a service with 1,000 jobs and 20 agents, I'm going to see only a list of agents that apply to that service. So my team said, hey, we're going to take this RH6 agent down, so I'm going to deselect it, and it's going to be down from 700 to 900, for example. We're going to take it down for 2 hours. So let's see what effect that has on our service. So it's going to refresh the data from this viewpoint. You'll notice that because we've got a scenario in play here, that it's changed the color so that we know that there's something different about it. So in this case, we see that the original estimate is 1907. The estimate to completion is still the same. Great. Okay, we can go ahead and take the agent down at that time, and it's not going to affect us though. But maybe they come back and say, okay, we're going to take it down for a longer period of time later in the day. So let's say 1600 to 2300. We're going to take that agent or that group of agents down, and so we'll refresh that data, and we'll see now that the estimate to completion has been fairly severely impacted there. So you might be able to go back to your team and say, hey, we can't take this down, give me a different time range, or you've played with some scenarios and you've said, hey, we can take it down in this time. So again, really good information to be able to see how a change might affect a service here. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to close that what if. The next thing I wanted to show you is also new to version 9. It's called the Estimation Assistant. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a different viewpoint here. And this Estimation Assistance tool is typically used in large services. Maybe you've got hundreds or thousands of jobs in a service, and at times it might be difficult to see why something is not going to run or why it's going to be late. And so I've got my viewpoint here, and I can, like the ad hoc, I can pick any job at any point. Typically, though, if it's a large service, you might start just with the BIM job here at the bottom. So I'm going to highlight that job, and I'll click Estimation Assistance. This is the new tool for version 9. So based upon what I think is happening, or what I'm expecting something different that is not happening, I'm going to choose the appropriate option. So I can, in this case, the service is not going to run, so I'm going to choose the does not run, and click Suggest Why. And so what this does is tells me in this specific scenario what the furthest job is from the job that I selected, and that's the problem one. So I can click on that job, go easily to that. So again, if you've got 1,000 jobs, I can just quickly go to that and see exactly what's going on. In this case, it's a confirmation. It's not going to run, and so that's what our problem is at the moment. Similarly, if I wanted to do this with an ad hoc service, I could do the same type of thing. I'll go back to my ad hoc service, and for example, I'll pick the last job, or maybe not the last job in this time, and I can click Estimation Assistance, and probably this one is something that's running too long, so I'm going to suggest why. And again, it gives me information about what's the job, what's the reasons, there's some variance in the statistics, and so that lets me deal with it then appropriately. Okay, so the next feature I wanted to show you is relating to HTML5. So in the past, the browsers that we could use for the BIM web interface were all based upon Silverlight. So starting with version 9, specifically FixPack 3, we now support HTML5 instead. So this allows it to open up to newer browsers. So the other aspect of that is we've combined the BIM web interface with the self-service web interface. So if I come here to the configuration manager and I click on web server URLs, I'll notice that my batch impact manager URL, it points to self-service as well as self-service. So we've combined those. If you use an old URL that had the BIM right here, it's going to still open up, but it's going to have you redirect to the self-service. So the changes are really more on the back end. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. From a BIM perspective, even though it does say self-service, it applies to both. From a BIM perspective, there's not going to be a lot that's changed. I'll still be able to open up my services, take a look at the jobs, and go from there. Just as a kind of as a teaser, the next webinar next month is going to get into this web interface in a little bit more depth, both from a self-service and a BIM perspective. So, okay, the last thing when it comes to BIM that I wanted to talk about is I'll go back here to the Configuration Manager, and version 8 FixPack 4, we introduced a new feature called Auto Export, although it's really more of a hidden feature. There are times when the support team, maybe you call us up and say, I've got a problem with the service, I might be getting some false alerts, and can you help me out with that? So typically what we need is an export of the Enterprise Manager database when that issue occurs. And so sometimes that can be problematic for you guys. If you got a service that's alerting at 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody's there to run an export. So we gave this capability here. So on the BIM component here in the CCM, I'm going to right click and click Control Shell. And if I were to just go into the help and see all the different parameters here, there's quite a few, but trust me, there's nothing really related to the auto export. So like I said, it's a hidden feature. So if you type auto_export in caps and then click apply, we'll see the usage for this. So what it's allowing me to do is to turn this feature on, determine what I want to export, the full EM database, partial EM database, and the service name or names that I want to do this for. And I can give it a time frame. So as an example, I can do something like this. I can turn it on. This is my service. I can set the time range. So if it's 2 o'clock, and I'll click apply, and it turns it on. So the nice aspect of this is that when it does run into an issue, it'll export the database and then turn itself off. So if there's multiple alerts or multiple issues, it's not going to export the EM database multiple times. So if I go, in this case on Windows, I'm on the EM server, I go to the log directory. What I'll see is this auto BIM export directory, and if I go in there, I'll see various EXP files. So if an event occurs and an auto export takes place, just zip these up, or if it's Unix, tar them up, shoot them over to us in support, and just let us know the job or the alert or the problematic scenario, and that'll really help us troubleshoot and get through things a lot quicker. Okay, moving on to forecast. What I wanted to show you here, I'll go back to the GUI and I'll click on the forecast domain. And one of the nice features, quick little things, is just if you haven't seen these presets, these are kind of nice. So if you've got a forecast that you do fairly often, you can set up the different filters and go into presets and then save it and load it. So I've got one here that I've saved off before because I'm going to run this fairly often. And then I'll click open to look at this forecast for, in this case, for tomorrow. So forecast knows that this set of jobs is part of a service, so it lets us know it's going to be late. So we did actually kind of see that on the BIM side, but we see that there's quite a few jobs that are not going to run, and so this is where both on the BIM and the forecast side, you can run those what-if scenarios as well. So I have a couple different options here. Like BIM, I can come here. If you happen to know the specific scenario that you want to run, you can choose that. In this particular case, I've got a job that it says it's not going to run, so I can right-click on it, and I can add the what-if here, or if I want to see exactly what's going on, I'll click Y there. I can go ahead and see that there's, in the simulation that Forecast runs, it's because of a confirmation. So I'm just going to add that here. I'm going to add that what if scenario. Now, if I feel confident that I want to let all jobs be confirmed automatically as part of a forecast, again, these are scenarios, so it's not actually affecting the jobs as they run, it's affecting the scenario. So I'm confident that I'll just go ahead and confirm all the jobs. And we see that the simulation changes and it lets the job end. So that helped with our jobs. Now they're, instead of 18 that aren't running, or now there's only 8 here, so we can kind of continue on down, look at some other scenarios and maybe why this didn't run. So similarly, we'll do another what if. We can do another why actually, and see exactly what this is. So we see that this also had a confirmation, but the what if got us by that. This case, there's some resources that need, so we're going to go ahead and add that. I'm going to increase it by 4, and I'll let take the defaults, the time that it typically starts this job. And again, it lets us get through this service. So now everything based upon these assumptions is going to finish correctly. Now, if you have scenarios like the confirm or resources or other what ifs that maybe there's conditions that you can go by, rather than doing a what if every time when you run a forecast, it probably makes a little bit more sense to do this as a rule. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these what if scenarios, and I'll create these as rules. So in the tools domain, I'm going to go to Forecast BIM Rules and in essence add these similar ones. So we don't have all of the what if scenarios, but we have the ones that really apply to making a rule. So I'm going to go ahead and do a confirmation. I'll go ahead and let the confirm occur at the average start time, and if I'm, just select your criteria that apply to this rule, and I'm confident that in my forecasts and BIM services that I'm okay confirming everything. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'll create another just quick rule for that quantitative resource that we had. I'll do it only in this data center, and for that resource, and for that amount. So again, so now I've got my 2 rules. I'll go ahead and save those. And then if we go back to our forecast, now if we rerun this, we've got 14 now. If we rerun this, I don't have any what if scenarios applied, and it lets my forecast handle properly without me having to do anything. So if you're comfortable with whatever scenario or what if, then you can set that up easily and quickly as a rule, and Forecast will handle that. Now, this applies to BIM as well. So we had, if we go back to the service monitor, what will happen once the polling finishes, it will, because that rule in this particular service, there were some confirmed jobs, it will take this off of exactly like that. So it wasn't going to complete, BIM went through its cycle, now it's at least estimated to complete. Again, keep in mind, this doesn't change the actual job. So if I go to the service itself, wrong service. If I go to the actual service itself, it doesn't actually confirm the job, it's just the estimations. So, okay, the last thing I wanted to show you with Forecast is in the planning domain. Fairly small feature, but I've seen a few people that aren't necessarily aware of this. So I've got some jobs opened up, and I want to determine when this job is going to run. So I've got a job, I go to scheduling, and I can easily click view schedule. It tells me that this particular job is going to run Monday to Thursday. Great, I'm good with that. Now, I don't want to have to do that for every single job. So what I can do is highlight the folder level, right click on that, and click view schedule. Again, I've seen people who didn't realize this existed, and they were kind of going through job by job and doing that. So we'll see once this comes up that it will show us the forecast there we go. It'll show us the forecast, and we can see everything in the folder then. So, maybe like I said, I've seen this before where people didn't realize that a couple jobs weren't scheduling. Here, these are Monday to Wednesday, but they were intended to be on Thursday, and now you can quickly and easily see which ones those are, and then go quickly address. So, okay, that's it. Let me go back to our presentation, and we'll continue on. So, here's some things that I wanted you to definitely take away from this webinar. When at all possible, really want you to install the latest Enterprise Manager Fix Pack so that you have the latest features, including those for BIM and Forecast. BIM and Forecast updates come with Enterprise Manager, and so there's definitely times when we see people who have an issue and it's just, here, put the latest Fix Pack on and you're good to go. So, all right. We also saw, fairly briefly, but the analysis viewpoint, whether it's ad hoc or the traditional BIM, is just a great way to view and troubleshoot these services. There's a lot of good information. Again, we saw briefly the time gaps and so forth, and a lot of great information there about how to troubleshoot a service or where things are with that service. Whenever you define a BIM or forecast component, just make sure that the GUI server name in the properties matches the exact name of the GUI server has defined for itself. The field's case sensitive. It might be a host name, but this article, the 119080, talks about this in more detail as well. In version 9 specifically, there was an issue where the forecast times would be off by an hour or more. And so this article, the 111594, talks about an option in the GUI, this Control-M time option, and just recommend you set that and then just make sure that your forecasts come out okay. And then with the auto export, the 25304 article is a good one to view to get more details on that if you want some more specifics. And then here are the links I mentioned to the past webinars. Again, we had these BIM and Forecast. If you haven't seen them, a great couple ones to take a look at. All right, definitely thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking time out of your day, and I hope the information provided was useful. You'll be getting a survey as you close the webinar. We definitely encourage you to fill it out and provide feedback on where we can improve and on any future topics you would like to see. We also definitely encourage you to follow us on Control-M on Facebook and Twitter, and any of the past webinars can be viewed on the BMC communities as well as YouTube and iTunes. And this webinar today will be posted to those locations in a couple of days. And then as I mentioned before, our next topic is going to be about the self-service interface, so it's going to delve deeper into that. And if you haven't seen the BMC communities, a lot of great information in there, good technical discussions. You can get a chance to talk to other users and see what they're doing, search for content, and again, another place to be able to check out these past webinars.